about to say, definitely within other cultures, they also discriminate between light skin and dark skin. Mm-hmm. But within their own race, especially Indians, they call them the dark ones, darkies. Mm-hmm. And it is somewhat similar. But I know Dr. Frances Westland, she wrote a wonderful book called The ISIS Papers, where she describes just the color code, and basically her theory is people of lighter complexions, people who are of like the Caucasian race, they basically have recessive genes as far as their DNA. So when you reproduce with a darker skin person, the darker skin DNA genes, they are not recessive, so they're going to be dominant. So it's really, she kind of breaks it down to a scientific level, and I think it's a wonderful book to read when you're trying to understand why there's so much hatred towards that darker skin race. It's basically because our genes are dominant, and we're going to be more visible in reproduction.
Wow, that's a good point.
In the 1700s, slave owner Willie Lynch came up with what he said was a foolproof method to turn slaves against one another. He used things like age, class, sex, and the one that is most prominent that we still see today is color. He figured out a way to turn light-skinned slaves against dark-skinned slaves. Let's see how we are still affected today. Do you think there's any benefit to being either light-skinned or dark-skinned?
I think that what I've talked about with Maureen before is it's ironic that Caucasian women would love to be darker. We aim to look your color. We're doing everything we can. And yet I see a lot of women of color try to make themselves look lighter. And I think that everyone's just trying to look like you two.
Right, okay.
And I find that funny because I spend a lot of my time trying to look more bronze.
And why is that? Why is that?
That's a really good question.
Colonization.
Colonization. That's my best answer. But it's a cultural. It's got to be American culture. Or, actually, if you look at it, it goes on for as long as history has been recorded, that people were trying to look lighter. So at what point did women want to look darker? But Caucasian women, at one point in time, if you were darker, that meant you were poor because you were out working in the field as a peasant. And the the beauty was that porcelain white skin, but at some point, and the first time I saw it was 1980, but that might have been just my experience, but we wanted to be dark and bronzy and sun-kissed, as we call it. So,
and do you agree with all this?
I think so, but it's always, and if you look at brown-skinned people across the world, I mean, Asians, they could be Latin people, even European. There's always, some sort of, we'll just call it what it is, some sort of self-hatred. The darker-skinned people want to be lighter-skinned. My dad lives in the Philippines, and, even the dark-skinned Filipinos want to be lighter-skinned Filipinos. It's the same thing with Spanish people. They want to be lighter. I mean, you look at Japanese people, the same thing. They want to be lighter, and it has to do with class, and if you're darker, that does mean you're outside. But it all has to do with colonization and the dominant force that's out there, taking over everywhere, and that becomes the dominant culture, which is European-esque features and things like that. Yeah. Absolutely. And people want to be like those who have colonized and dominated them.
Black, essentially, is all color within. So you can have such a beautiful variety of skin tones, starting at the darkest black, and white is the lack of all color. So you have to add to it. So it's kind of interesting that we are all essentially black, and we're just different shades all the way down, because that's how that color works. That's how it works in the color scheme.
All right.
Yeah. So I just am lacking a lot of the color. I'm about as pale as they get, but I love that. I love thinking that we are all essentially from the darkest color, and that we just have different shades and different varieties of that. That's what I like to think.
You have children who grow up in the suburbs trying to be thugs. They think that's cute. It's not cute because you don't know how to talk. Right. It's not cute because and first of all those the cars they're driving and all of that stuff, they don't own that stuff. No. Yeah, the crib on cribs, they don't own half of the time. But it's just all, to me, it falls back on the parents. You really can't blame someone in the street for something your child is going to do.
But that's the whole premise of the village.
Right.
It's the family, it's the community,
absolutely,
it's
neighbors,
the neighbors, it's the celebrity,
the role model.
Yeah. Just a cycle. I mean, I work with, there's a case now that I'm dealing with where everybody's 15 years apart. The child, the mother, and the grandmother are literally 15 years apart. And the child, you're trying to talk to this child, and tell her something when, you know, you may talk to a little girl, because I saw some girls on Marta one time just using profanity, and I talked to them, and they were very receptive to what I had to say. None of them got disrespectful with me, but I will guarantee you their mamas cuss them out on a normal, every single day they can, or they see their mothers behave like that. That's why they act like that. It's all about modeling, like everyone keeps saying.
Regardless of the reason, many have decided to take on open relationships. Let's take a look and see what Atlanta has to say about this issue.
You get two good-looking people together, it's hard to resist somebody else that you also see.
In Islam, you can have more than one wife. You have to be able to support all of them.
And treat them equally.
And treat them equally.
I don't feel that there's a problem with being open as far as dating, but I don't think anybody should be open as far as you spreading yourself around. You leave energy with someone when you spread yourself around, especially as a woman.
When you're dating, everything's good, and then 7 years, when that 7-year itch comes around that they talk about, all of a sudden someone wants to come to you and say, what about an open relationship, sweetie? Well, you know, we've been dating for all these years. What happened? You know? So, but I mean, if you both go into the relationship and knowing that that's what you want and that's what you enjoy in your sex life, then more power to you.
I would consider it. I mean, I'm in a relationship now that is not one, and I don't think the relationship I'm in now would be good for an open relationship, but yeah, I'd consider it.
Okay, so you say you would consider it. Have you ever been involved in one previously?
Not where both people consented to it.
I guess I'm more of a kind of selfish lover. I like to, you know, keep it within one setting between me and my partner.
And how open are you in your relationship?
I'm honest with my partner if I had one, but I'm single. But you know, I'm very honest with my partner, and I wouldn't, if he was to ask me to do an open relationship, that's something I definitely would.
Welcome to Reflections of a Diva. This is the segment of our show called Questions for a Diva, where you get to ask the divas a question. If you have a question for us, email us at questionsforadiva@divasrock.com. Elise, can you pull the first question out of the Diva Bowl for us?
Should child support be based on father's income or what it takes financially to take care of a child in a given state?
I believe, and I'm a firm believer in this, you cannot put a price on how much it takes to raise a child, because there are so many people who do it poor and homeless, and then there's our people who do it with so much more to splurge. You cannot put a price tag on your child's livelihood or their physical health or being. You just can't.
Today we have two very special guests on Reflections of a Diva. Ms. Rhonda Height, event host and president of Let's Talk LLC, and Ms. Roz Lewis, executive director